Welcome to the SpiritRxPodcast, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Healing. In this place, two healers come together, each walking a different path, yet bound by a common purpose. Dr. Luke, a quantum chiropractor, and Dr. Hummel, a naturopathic doctor. These two practitioners have dedicated themselves to a vital quest to unite the timeless remedies passed down through the ages with the powerful discoveries of modern medical science. For they understand what many have forgotten, that true healing honors both tradition and innovation. Should you wish to learn more of their stories, their practices, or how to walk this path with them, you will find that knowledge in the link below. And now, let the healing wisdom begin.
All right, today we welcome Zeke Schmelzle, who is a personal trainer, and we would like for you to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then maybe launch into how you got into fitness.
Sure. So my name is Zeke. Pretty much been into fitness professionally about 10 years now, I believe. So I first got into that it was like when I was in college. I was pretty fascinated with just wanting to get bigger. I think that really just stemmed from like my high school team. Like a lot of the players that I played with in high school on my high school team did like football and baseball, and they did a lot with the weightlifting program. And because I was so tall and like a decent player, especially defensively, like I always played up. So then I was always playing with kids that were bigger and older than me. And it's funny because I think I realized it, or like I just focused on it a lot less in high school. But when I got to college, and especially like later when I look back reflecting on it, it's like they said a lot of stuff to me that like subconsciously really sunk in, that I was way too skinny or hadn't developed enough muscle or whatever. Like even my high school basketball coach, like one time in the locker room was like, "Zeke, you have no butt at all. There's literally nothing there." And it's just like laughing or whatever in locker room talk. They're not like thinking anything of it or like how it's affecting me. But I think like I did, and obviously that creates like subconscious stuff, right? So technically I do have the stereotypical, like I was super skinny and I had insecurities about that. So then I wanted to do weightlifting. And then I just think like myself, I'm very detail oriented and analytical minded, and how my brain tries to process stuff and organize it, kind of similar to like computer folders, I guess, in a way, is like how I like to explain it to other people. And so then the more I would look into fitness and want to know more just so that I could not be skinny anymore and achieve that as fast as possible, I just really started to love like the more and more that I learned about the body. And obviously in undergrad, I was studying biology pre-medical. So taking organic chem and biochem and organic chemistry and a lot of that stuff, and anatomy 1 and 2, that just really added a whole nother layer to my YouTube degrees of like fitness knowledge that I was like soaking up like daily. So pretty much you put all that together, and it just made sense, being a person that can micromanage like all the vast details and all the avenues of like health and wellness that people need. Using my detail analytics for that, that's where I wound up.
All right, cool. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I know that for me and a lot of people out there, when I think of fitness, I'm thinking about fitness, whole pizza in my mouth. And that's definitely something that we got to change. And I think that comes down to motivation, right? And so here's a big question for you. Motivation can be really fleeting for a lot of people. And so how do you address that? How do you help clients stay motivated when, their motivation goes on vacation for them?
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is a lot of people have this perception that motivation is external. And I think that the biggest thing really is actually having a big enough internal. Technically, it's a decision, but like why? So the why of wanting to fix your health has to become greater than those short-term like habits that you continue to make, right? And so people sometimes will occasionally experience something external that they're considering like this external motivation that like made me like want to do really well for 2 weeks. And then the second their buddy asks them to go get pizza and they're like, yes, pizza, and they make the short-term decision. It's more so just about that internal decision that they have on what they're working towards. And that's where also like specific goals really help with that as well. And honestly, I'm like a really big example of that as well. In college, I basically was walking like 20,000 steps a day all across campus, working out weights like 2 hours a day, sometimes also doing like basketball practice like an hour a day on top of that, 4 or 5 days a week, like 18-hour days, like moving before I'd lay down like in my room. And I, back then, not wearing a fitness tracker at all, had no idea. Like, I'm just thinking, oh, I genetically have this like fast metabolism. And so I was literally eating 5,500 to 7,000 calories a day in order to start putting on weight, which made sense because I was literally hyperactive in like my step count on top of weight training, on top of everything that I was doing and on a consistent basis. And when I compare that now to my adult life, where I have a sedentary 50-hour a week job where I sit at a desk a lot, right? And then I go home and I'm very worn out, like mentally and stress wise. So I tended to want to sit also. And then with work for convenience, like you'll go get food that is just typically like more carbohydrate and fat heavy for the convenience of it, right? And that stress relief. And so that literally was just those environmental things that really adjusted that.
How would you, as a personal trainer, if somebody comes in new, let's say it's first of the year, and they're like, oh yeah, January, New Year's resolution, I'm going to go to the gym more. And okay, they've got a little bit of internal motivation, but how do you, as a personal trainer, bring that external motivation and then help them start to make a shift into more internal than the external?
Yeah, I think the biggest, and this is where they say community is huge, and like having people that you meet at the gym is huge, which is really true. And like I even experienced that for me as someone that you would consider more of a fitness head or fitness nut or just a lot more committed or more hardcore. It's like I have a big passion for it compared to just what we refer to as like general population or like just a regular old Joe that wants to be healthy but is not having that same obsessiveness or maybe like hobby love of working out. Even for me, especially if I'm doing early morning workouts, which is the best way to guarantee that they get done consistently, meeting people for that block really helps you stay committed and not have that like reasoning of that short term, like, oh, I just won't go in today. When I'm meeting someone at that time, it's I want to get out of bed with enough time to not be late to meet that person for us to do that workout. And that really adds to consistency. And the main reason I also know that about myself is when some of my gym partners in the past like travel, sometimes like once a month during certain periods, it's like when they're gone for half that week, it is way harder for me to still get in there at 5:30 a.m. if that's like my lifting block suddenly once they're traveling, and can actually be a little bit annoying only be once I find out that has that heavy value. Am I externally motivated, or is my why big enough? It's I've committed to do this thing with this person. Like I enjoy going to see my trainer. Most of the time there's some kind of a friendship related relationship connection. Most people do not hate their trainer, like who they are as a person or a personality. And so you have a lot of those intrinsic things that are going on and impacting that really help remove what people feel like is this big daunting, am I going to be motivated enough?
I love that because it's interesting when you think about patterns of behavior. A lot of consistent patterns of behavior are based upon addiction cycles. And so there's a huge, really eye-opening study that was done some time ago in I think South America, where they were basically showing how people who were addicted to some pretty addictive substances were able to completely go off of those substances because in this community, the whole community would come together and support them, and then they would be happy and they'd find joy in that. And I think community with any addictive behavior, whether that's fitness, whole pizza in my mouth kind of behavior, like is really a profound aspect. So I love that you brought community into it because that's a big part, I think, of getting people where they need to be.
Let me throw another example at you. Let's say there's someone who's middle-aged, and when they were younger, they could eat what they wanted, they could get the weight back off without too much trouble. They could exercise a little, a lot. It didn't really matter. But now they're middle-aged and they're like, whoa, things are starting to change. But they look around and they're like, I'm like so busy now. I've got a busy job. I've got a family. I've got all these demands on my time. I just don't know would you approach a person that has those kind of obstacles to maybe pull them into some fitness?
Yeah, two components. I think the biggest thing is one of the most powerful conversations that I had towards the end of my freshman year of college, essentially, which obviously is the first time that like you get out of the house and like your parents aren't dictating like what's happening for most of the day. And all of a sudden you're divvying up your own thing. And as Brian Boyer, I forget his exact role at our college, but I know he had selected me for the freshman like leadership retreat that we had went on and stuff. But it was me and another person. I think we were just stressed about like midterms coming up or something. And he literally made us write on paper how many hours were in the day and everything that like we minimally had to do in the day. And there was like so many hours left. And so I think just from if you literally do it's the same as money, right? If you actually write down your budget, someone who's not tracking their budget at all, but just it's easy to say I'm not making enough money. And then if you write down your budget, starting with the income that comes in and your necessity bills, then you're adding in the optional ones that you've chosen to add right now. It's like usually there's a lot more space in there once you actually write that down. And then you're like, oh, I'm spending way too much on willy-nilly stuff that is just adding up. It's the same thing with our time. And so really most of the time, it's actually just a lack of attention to it. And a lot of times the biggest thing that's when people are coming up with this is it's actually, I forget the exact psychology on it, but it's like where your own ego wants you to self-fulfill a reason to not, sometimes even not try something because you're actually just afraid to fail it, or because your ego even wants you to self-fulfill like short-term comfort. And you feel good when self-fulfilling that slightly right in the moment. And so then your body's actually accidentally like self-rewarding, making short-term decisions that are bad for you long-term. And so that's where really just the discipline component comes in there. And but yeah, I would say the biggest thing is it's either a lack of attention to your time. If someone has logically thought about it a little bit, they might just need some help on like where they can throw things in. And I think some of what we're going to talk about down the road when we get into like cardio versus weights or some of the different things, there is a very minimal amount that you need to do in the gym to not only just maintain, but like progress. It is way less than what the general population would think that you need to put in the gym in order to get
Well,
fit or healthy.
let's dive into that more because we've talked about getting people into the gym, right? But now, okay, now they're in the gym. Tell us what people think they need or what they really need. Guide us through that process. You talked about the cardio versus the weights and give us some information.
Yeah. So in a perfect world of where someone is like having perfect adherence and doesn't have vacations coming around or isn't getting sick and things like that, I very easily could take a client that is at whatever point, whether they're like decently fit already or like in a nice place or they're like significantly overweight. I could easily do two 30-minute weight sessions with them twice a week and just have them adhere to like a 10,000 day step count daily and like a macro diet like given, and they could make consistent progress for a whole year off of two 30-minute weight sessions a year and like 10,000 step count. And that's an hour. That's an hour of time that you would be coming to a location where you could just like put your phone down, not worry about other stuff, and just focus on some weightlifting. And your body, the thing that, and this is a big misconception, which we won't pivot into this quite yet, but the biggest misconception in the fitness side of things is this understanding of like overtraining or like a lack of recovery. Like all of that is tying together. The reason that two sessions you can make a lot of progress on that is because your average Joe can get enough sleep over multiple days to recover from one 30-minute weight session. And your body will adapt to that, right? And so making very marginal adjustments in either like your form just gets sharper week to week, that's also progression. Adding like 5 pounds to the bar total is the most common form of progression, but you can continue to progress in these different types of progressions that really stack up over time. But the biggest key is for the amount of training that you're doing with weights, are you able to actually recover from that enough to have adaptation to create that progression? And it takes very little each week in order to do enough to create progression, yet alone maintain.
This kind of brings up a good thought because you're really focusing on, okay, fitness from a hit the gym, cardio weights kind of thing. We've all heard the phrase abs are made in the kitchen before. And so my question is, where would you assign the percentages? Like what level is nutrition on there? If you had 100%, what percent would you dedicate to nutrition? What percent would you dedicate to being in the gym, hitting the exercise? And then what's that one nutritional tip that you give people that's like the biggest bang for their buck when they're starting out?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it is a little cliche. Obviously, I've heard tons of times where people ask this question, and like the actual answer to what percentage is food and what percentage is training is, once again, it's that conglomeration of whatever your level of training is, you just need the appropriate nutrition and like sleep recovery to accommodate for the training that you've done, right? So, three different examples. Let's say a person that is closer to me that is training, let's call it 2 hour weightlifting sessions, 5 to 6 times a week, which would be a lot more high end. You can go a bit above that, but that's very like top end. You're going to need 15-minute myofascial release sessions, like 10 to 15-minute like stretching, just to open your body up from how bound up it is going to get from that training, the damage of that training muscularly and neuromuscularly. And that's one of the biggest neglected things by people that you would consider like fitness heads or like deeper in the industry, is understanding that recovery side of, if you're smashing your body closer and closer to like professional athletes, you have to have professional recovery. And that is one of the biggest neglected things I would say in the world of fitness. But so at that level, you need those myofascial and like the literally good sleep in order to actually get the benefits that you're looking to get out of that training. If you are sleeping like 6 hours or less and you're not on some kind of drug enhancement, your body is not going to be able to recover from 2 hour sessions 5 to 6 times a week. It's not going to happen. And prior to someone like focusing on their sleep, it's just, if they got lucky enough to stack up a couple 8 hours nights of sleep, the next week they're going to feel like they really made progress this week. And if they're not thinking about the recovery at all, they're just flipping a coin that like they happen to get better sleep this week, and then all of a sudden they were able to make a more significant amount of progression. And so that is where, when you taper that down significantly, for whether it's a good middle ground, I would say is like 45 minute to 1 hour sessions a week is like a nice point. But literally down to, you could do 2 full body days where you're just doing the best like compound movements. You're not even like, your body doesn't need to experience soreness, which is also usually significantly multiplied by a lack of sleep. When you get 6 hours or less of sleep and you've done weight training, you're going to feel like 60-70% soreness compared to what actually should be the normal there. And but that's really the biggest thing, is catering the recovery. Now, obviously, nutrition is also a huge component of being able to physically recover. When a person is over 25% body fat, I would say it is very easy for your body to pull from that fat storage to make up any kind of caloric deficit from intake in order to have those calories to be able to recover, which I can also personally speak to, as far as, because I recently did a really aggressive 8-week challenge and had some very heavy deficits, but I had that extra body fat storage, and I was literally getting stronger for 6 weeks in significant caloric intake deficit. But it's because my body had those calories stored from the stuff my face pizza moments that I had the prior year. Those calories were stored in my body fat storage, and my body was able to make use of that. So that is the component of where how much is nutrition and how much is training. It's really just, if your training is at 50% intensity or like volume, then your nutrition needs to match that. If you're going all out 90 to 100% in like your training and much more aggressive sessions and things like that, you need much better nutrition and much better sleep. Otherwise, you're not going to capitalize on that extra training or extra fitness that you were partaking in, if that makes sense.
That's a response.
I like that. Let's take a different angle here. There's all kinds of videos out there where people are having crazy accidents in the gym. Maybe the the treadmill, they're flying off the end of it, or they're trying to pull down the weights and almost pull the whole thing over. What are some crazy things that you've seen in the gym? And also, like I'm sure every day when you walk through the gym, you're seeing some things that make your eyes roll, maybe that are smaller. So like touch on those, the big things and the little things.
Yeah, luckily here at our gym, there's quite a bit less of that. Being a general manager too, some of that stuff, I like my head is, oh my gosh, when I see people like falling off treadmills and stuff, that's such a nightmare for gyms. And I'm also like, I know the square footage legally that treadmills have to be spaced from each other and how much space behind a treadmill that equipment can be placed behind it and stuff. So there's all kinds of different stuff that goes through my head when I'm watching these videos and things. But yeah, I think really it's a completely different approach that I have in my head now. I know in college I used to be like, oh, I should go help like anyone that I can because like I would want the help and I would want someone to tell me how to improve something, which is nice. But really oftentimes like unsolicited is not the best. And most of the time, if I'm coming up and it's not solicited, it's usually actually because someone is like either doing something dangerous or is like against gym policy. And unfortunately, it's my job to go deliver that to them. But luckily in our gym, we don't have too much Instagram funny moments. We do have one member who shan't be named, who comes in and does this very twitchy, like partial movements on every single machine he gets on or any like free weight he gets on. And I will say it's better than not coming in and not touching weights, right? Because at least his skeletal system and his nervous system and his muscular system is experiencing load a bit and moving that and handling that. So he's getting some benefit from that, but obviously not the same if you would just do what we would consider more normal working out, or at least like a half and half. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of that stuff is just really, it's just very cringe.
Yeah, I'm remembering that video where the woman's running on the treadmill and she's going pretty fast and then she trips, falls, swings around and hits the person on the treadmill next to her. She trips
Takes,
and
Yeah.
falls. And then the guy comes over to help and steps on the running treadmill and flips it.
yeah.
One of my
Those are
Yeah,
funny.
treadmills are dangerous.
hilarious angst.
Yeah, all the funniest things that have happened to our gym are more to do with inside locker rooms, and those probably aren't the best for podcast talk.
Right.
Very hilarious, but
All right, so here's a good one. And I know it's hard when you're given questions that are just like, okay, what's the one thing? Because it just isn't like that. Real life just doesn't work like that. But so what would you consider the most underrated sort of desert island exercise? The one that gives you like the most incredible benefits, but that most people are ignoring currently.
I would technically answer that in a couple ways. If you were forcing me to pick a specific exercise, I would actually say the sled if I was picking a single exercise, but I have a couple different sleeper answers that kind of come at a different angle from that. One specific movement I would say is 1000% sled. If you would come into a gym like 20 years ago when I was very young, you would see probably 30% of that gym's equipment was cardio equipment. And then literally the way that this should be changed around is that you should have gyms that have 10 sleds is how it should be. That's how much like people should be doing the movement of a sled. It is extremely good for you want to be pushing that sled and then also reverse pulling that. And that is going to load all your joints in basically a fullness of how those joints need to be loaded in order to really be preventative on a lot of injuries that we see. I mean, that really just comes from a lack of usage. But the sled basically is extremely low risk. And when we're talking sled, like I'm not talking about sprinting with sleds. We're talking about just nice, slow pushing with like medium loads to up towards heavy once you get used to it. But you are able to use quite incredible poundage very quickly. That is going to give you a ton of the benefits, nervous system wise, skeletal muscle wise, hormone wise, all those systems in your body. Your muscle itself does not know how heavy something is. It just knows tension. But every other system in your body does know the physical load that is being moved in comparison. And so the sled does allow someone very quickly to start using 300 pounds, 400 pounds, even in their 70s, 500 pounds on just pushing that sled forward and pulling that sled back. And the skeletal system, the nervous system, the hormone system, all those systems in the body can recognize the sheer load of that compared to just doing like 100 pounds on a like cable machine. Is a huge difference on how your body is going to respond and need to create adaptations for that. And with the sled, there's not risk to that. Like you either can move the sled with that poundage on it or you cannot. And so that is the answer that I would give on the singular movement. That's very underrated, where literally gyms should have 5 to 10 sleds, and that should be more of a staple than people coming in walking on it. Although walking is very good, people would get a ton more benefits if the staple was come into the gym, warm up with some sled pushes, and then get into whatever else I'm doing. That would be massive on like the fitness industry. Maybe I'll start a new gym and build off that model and create a new success and just change everything.
I like that too. That the sled is one of my favorites, but you're right. Like oftentimes I'm like, okay, I'm going to get started. I'm going to head for the sled, and then they're all taken. And it's gosh, and they're going so slowly. Do I want to stand here for 10 minutes and wait until they finish, or do I want to shift over? So I like what you're saying. There's over 200 joints in the human body, and there's not a lot of exercises that are going to engage the majority of those. So that's a great answer. What else? Let's see. Oh, what would separate maybe a good workout from a great workout?
Yeah, originally thinking about that, my brain, of course, goes actually directly to recovery. So once again, I think that even if you have an awesome workout from a lot of standpoints, when you're just thinking about the training session and the potential to create adaptation, literally from the workout, it is just that. It is the potential to create adaptation. So from your training, the whole purpose, especially specifically from weight training, is to create a loud signal that your body needs to adapt to the stress of the session that you just did. Okay. But up until that point, it is still just a signal, which is still just potential for your body to capitalize on that. So until that enough nutrition goes in for your body to repair and be able to, if I come with the jackhammer into the side of the building and I smash 20 holes into the wall, and I have those building blocks, my wall is not getting stronger unless I'm bringing external building materials to add, plus the drywall that I smashed out with the hammer. I need the drywall that fell to the ground when I smashed those 20 holes, plus I need some more building material to add to it, or my wall is not going to get stronger. And so the smashing of the holes that from the weightlifting session that put 20 holes in my wall, I need to pick up the same material that I smashed out, put that back in there, and add some more support on the exterior in order to actually have my wall end up stronger. And that's what's happening while we sleep. So I need to be nutritionally bringing in new building materials so that the wall can actually be built stronger after I smash the holes in it. And I need to be sleeping long enough so that my body's construction team can come in, take that extra food and building blocks that I've intaken, and actually have the time to reconstruct that wall so that those holes are filled in and they're reinforced. Now I'm stronger in creating adaptations from that workout. But up until those extra materials come in and until that sleep can happen for my construction team, I'm only creating the potential from a really good workout in order to actually make the progress I want to make.
Well, I like that metaphor a lot. Let's just say someone comes to the gym, trainer versus not having a trainer. I could see that some people might be like, I'm a little embarrassed to ask for help and it feels uncomfortable. Could be one obstacle. And the other one might be, I'm stretching myself just for the gym membership. I don't think I want to pay extra for a personal trainer, but tell me like why it would be good to get a personal trainer and how often should a person be seeing one?
Sure. I think if you've never seen a personal trainer, you should get a personal trainer for 6 months. I truly think it's life changing. I think it's very comparable. There's so many other areas where we're happy to pay a professional or an expert to either one, just take care of something so we don't have to worry about it or put time into it ourselves. But even greater than that, just if everyone was forced to work with a trainer for 6 months in their like early 20s, that would have drastic impacts on like the population and people's health. Because once you work with a trainer for 6 months, a lot of that material, most people are soaking that in and not needing to necessarily relearn it. right? So working with the trainer for a period of 3 to 6 months at a minimum when you're young, think about all that you're learning about the basics of working out and how to be consistent, and like meeting with that trainer. You're literally, the people who work with a personal trainer are like 80, I think it's 80% specific, 80% more likely to reach their goals. And part of that is what we talked about earlier, like that relationship, that community, that the commitment with just another external human, right? Technically not even a personal trainer. I would also argue you're close to 80% more likely to reach your goals just by meeting another person who is very consistent and works out the same as you. There's a lot of components that make a good gym partner. One of the biggest things I think for regular adults is, are you guys both able to work out at the same time of day? That's probably like the number one factor. Number two would be, do you guys train close enough to the same way because of either the way you like to train, or if someone like completely has a messed up shoulder, they might have a totally different approach to what they're doing for upper body. So that might make that not pair well. But outside of that, I think you're going to get a massive amount of the benefit of having a lot more success of reaching your goals, which really is less about these like intrinsic, oh, I need to lose this massive amount of pounds or look this significantly amount better. It's like literally the goal should just be, I want to have made like noticeable progress 4 weeks from now. And you should just write down what that looks like on like certain exercises, and just write down some very specific things for 4 weeks from now, right? And just try and work towards those small goals each time. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make also. Is one of the biggest things I think for people in the fitness industry and who get into YouTube content and things. The more advanced you become, the more you try and do these different switch up or change up things, and they call it like shocking your body. But really, the problem is that people who have been lifting for like less than 15 years should be doing the exact opposite. They should be coming in, practicing the hardest movements, which are barbell movements, for the sake of practicing them and trying to make the form on those movements look as pretty as possible, as graceful as possible for a very long time. When your body adapts to those and you feel like almost too comfortable, like at the bottom of a squat, that's where you want to prioritize just like adding 5 pounds to the bar like every single week. And that's what makes those, that's what I would say is the other sleeper part on those barbell movements, is TikTok and media like makes it really famous to do all these weird new like crazy angle things. But the reality is, especially if we're talking about a decade of someone's life and what is going to give them the most bang for their buck, is like 5 barbell movements that hit everything in your body, that also allow you to experience like those heavy loads that hit your neuromuscular system, your hormones, and your skeletal system, and give you all those additional benefits. Learning to just overhead pressing and some kind of barbell squat will completely maintain perfect posture in the skeletal system all by itself, just doing that once or twice a week. So the movement of overhead pressing, where the bar travels right in front of your body and is in line with your skeleton at the top, and some kind of a front squat or a back squat, or technically even a zercher. If you have really good like posture, no posture imbalance with like upper cross or lower cross or anything like that, barbell squatting and overhead pressing twice a week, those 2 movements by themselves will maintain like perfect posture for you just from doing those movements. So obviously there's this barrier of, it takes a lot of stability, it takes a lot of control, it takes a lot of skill development. And then if people have those different like things where they're starting out, where they have like bad posture stuff, that stuff needs to be corrected before those movements are going to feel good for them, or even potentially be able to start them at all. So that's the tricky part, which is also where a trainer can really come in and help that. And also what makes a good trainer is someone who can see that those things are going on, know that they need to be corrected, and focus on correcting them first. But doing like the 5 main barbell movements, overhead press, some version of a squat, even zercher squats are really great and very easy to do. They take out some of the barriers that keep people away from squatting. A barbell row, some version of a hip hinge, whether it's a full deadlift or just like a RDL, which is much easier. And I forget the other one, but 4 or 5 main barbell movements, which you can easily condense into like that 30 or 45-minute session twice a week. Your body has a longer time of 6 months of this learning curve for your body to learn those movements and get good at them. And once you're past that learning curve, those movements will continue to make you progress a ton for the first 10 years, and still even at 20 years, Where if you're getting on like a leg extension machine or like a bicep curl machine, you're going to get a lot of short-term progress from that for 3 months. And within 6 months, most people can cap out on that machine and just basically be doing the whole stack, not getting any more progress from that machine in 3 to 6 months. And so that's really the biggest difference is when you're starting out, those machines are great or as accessory around that. But the biggest goal for people on the fullness of just like a health journey should be eventually to get into those barbell movements. And just for the sake of maintaining, keeping your body healthy, your body is made to be able to do those basic movements in a certain way. And getting to the point where your mobility and just the openness and flexibility and posture balance on your body to do them, the barbell will maintain that for you, continuing to get in and do those movements. Oh, bench press, that was the other one. How could I forget bench press? But those movements will maintain the basic health and basic posture balance and all of that for you. That is one thing I think too that has gone away is people want like the secret sauce, like this new special movement or this thing that looks really good on TikTok. A lot of people have done heavy squats or done heavy bench press or done these barbell lifts, but those really are the tried and true like core basics. They put the most mass on your body. They give you the most benefits like health and wellness wise to your hormones and things like that. And really should be the staple, even if you're 55 and getting into weightlifting. Your goal might be 2 years to get into just doing the bar with really good form. But the second I had a 72-year-old client that had done some college stuff back when he was in his 20s and hadn't done much weightlifting since. And it probably took us, his hip imbalance was so massive our first session that I was actually worried he even had some scoliosis. That's how lopsided his body was when doing like some lower body movements and things. And after about a year, I think it was right about a year, he accomplished a 135-pound front squat at 72, coming from, I was worried we wouldn't even be able to do squats at all. So learning to balance with them, doing body weight, just holding a plate on front, then getting into the barbell, then slowly loading the barbell. It took us a year, right? But now he cannot be in the gym and come back after a month and come in and we can still do like 25s on each side on that front squat, and it's going to really keep his lower body mobility and strength, and all of that is just massive benefits that he can reap now because we put that work in to getting his body where it can adhere and perform good form and have the balance and stability it needs to do these barbell movements.
So what I'm hearing you say, especially if we're talking about these different kinds of squats, that the diddly squat, there's no excuse for it. You got, no matter your age, you got to get in there and you got to get going.
Yeah, and I really like just when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking of, because I'm like picturing different people I know from media and just experience over the years who are just really incredible at what they do. And you know who I think of?
Who?
Chuck Norris.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Chuck
you
Norris.
see him lift, like it's like smooth and just beautiful. He's a lot
He put
older
the
now.
work in on the front end to get
Right.
that smooth, but now it's an afterthought, right? His body knows exactly how it wants to move that. It feels like home, right? Once you get that comfortability with the form part, then then your brain can only focus on driving really hard for a heavier load.
Beautiful.
Now, as healthcare professionals, we may see an individual that comes in that's had some kind of an injury, an accident, a fracture, and they got to go through the healing process for that injury. But then when that's over, they might, if it's a significant injury, they may be recommended to go to a physical therapist. Now, I always suggest when your physical therapy ends, you're not done. That because you're going to have some big muscle imbalances because while you've not been using those certain muscles, you're losing muscle. And so you now need to go see a personal trainer. And now not every personal trainer is going to be able to adequately and professionally pick up that the baton at that point. But can you just speak to that, A, the need for it, and B, like how would I select if I'm an individual and my healthcare professional says go to the gym and get a personal trainer to keep going with this? Just speak to that whole topic.
Yeah, it's super important. When you leave imbalance in the body, that is what really creates a significant amount of like vulnerability, potential to have injury, potential to have chronic pain show up and different things like that. And a big part of what is actually needed there as well is also that myofascial recovery side, right? A muscle that is really being trained intensely, which a significantly atrophied muscle is going to experience like very intense, like a lot of intensity from something that seems like a very lackluster workout will seem super intense to a very atrophied like muscle that has not like done muscular like work. It hasn't punched in its card for work in 3 to 6 months due to injury. It is going to try the nervous will send signals to your brain that torture is happening. And so that myofascial release does a really good job of one, the physicality of the muscle like gets physical relief, but the biggest thing that happens there is the nervous system receives signaling that it can let go and relax that muscle a little bit. If I had a super tight chest and had like very upper cross, like rounded posture where my shoulders were just really rounded forward, and then I got in a car accident and died, when I laid on the cadaver table, my pec muscles would seem just like everybody else's pec muscles. It is the nervous system specifically that is storing the information that the pec muscle should remain shortened and be what we would consider like a tight status. It's not the muscle itself that is tightened and refuses to open. And we know that from, like I said, when they open up cadavers, like all that, the muscle tissue is always the same. It's the nervous system that is creating the tightness and the inability for that muscle to want to open up. And so the myofascial release allows through like a significant amount of pressure to signal to that nervous system that it can let go, that it can relax that muscle, that it doesn't need to stay bound up and tightened up. And that's going to be like a really important part to coming back from injury and post the part where like that bone heals, but that bone needs to start getting under load again, and all those muscles around it haven't been pulling on that bone. You're mentally, you're going to have to fight the component of your body's screaming at you as if you're overdoing it, and really you're just trying to push it as much as you can push it today to get back to what should be like normal. But two, that recovery aspect is really going to help that muscle relax and that nervous system relax, and just like ease that process a bit, which is why you will see when you're at the physical therapy office, they do that regularly. They'll massage that area before they get started and or post the session, and apply those myofascial techniques and things like that in order to, allow for you to do 3 physical therapy sessions like in the same week on the same like shoulder region, right? That's only possible because we've learned that we can create these better conditions for the body to recover better and do these more frequency per week in sessions kind of thing.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, and I think for me, my takeaway is that if I'm looking for a personal trainer, I want to find someone that has the knowledge to understand recovery and myofascial release, and then how to build the person correctly into developing these proper habits and help motivate them too. What would be, just as a quick side note here, what's the thing that would say, hey, you probably shouldn't work with this trainer? What's one of the things that
What's a red
you've
flag?
heard that's like a red flag out there?
I think a red flag would be trainers that don't realize they're doing things that like actually can get people hurt. That's like super bad, which definitely is a thing. But I think the better thing to do would be to find a trainer that not only understands, but is like preaching. You need to start from this place of learning balance and like the skill of movement, which requires balancing in the muscle groups to not have like significant posture imbalances. And as a trainer, acquiring, there's a specific cert, the CES, it's corrective exercise and strengthening certification. There's definitely some other ones, I'm sure, but that's like NASM's biggest one, CES certification, which is all about like the balance between for upper cross posture, like recognizing that and knowing, okay, I need to loosen up the chest, especially likely the pectoral minor, pulling the front of the shoulder into anterior position and shortening that, which is going to lengthen the muscles on the back. And before I can strengthen those muscles that are over lengthened, that are also likely weakened, I have to pressure release the chest and then stretch the chest. Then that allows me to better train the weakened muscles on the back. And it's like a 4-step process, which the main posture ones, like I just have memorized, like what muscles it is and what steps I'm doing. But there's tons of specific, there's 3 different issues that someone can have in their ankle that are just the main issues that would cover like 90% of like ankle tightness that we would see. But there's just tons and tons. That's why some media pages like Squat University are excellent, because that guy just pushes out tons of videos breaking down exactly how you correct these very specific problems that cause these certain chronic pains. But a lot of people don't find out they have these things until it like is so chronic that then it forces you to have to stop and correct that. But that's what you want from a trainer. You want from your trainer is someone that preaches you need to have really good muscle balance and posture, stability and like core control, and just the ability to move well first. If they're not checking for that in your first session, then really they're just a glorified, what do I even call it? Just
Peacock.
variation.
Too much peacocking going on there.
They just know a lot of exercises to teach you how to do, but they're not knowing a specialization of like
how to apply that personally.
Just how to fix your body to be able to move better and be painful.
This topic is so big, just any of these questions we could almost do an entire podcast on.
True.
But as we're running out of time here, if you were going to put on your refrigerator, or you're going to give me to put on my refrigerator, like one sentence that would encapsulate the fitness philosophy that you would want to impart.
Yeah, I think there's really brief bullets, but I think summing it down to bullets, obviously there's so much like hyper details within fitness, which is where, once again, if you have something specialized, you should just get a trainer very temporarily. The amount of money that, you know, if you suddenly have to go to the hospital, that's going to even keep you from going into work. And so I think that under prioritizing like your health and fitness and like the physical like upkeep of your body is not a very smart move, because if you don't upkeep it, at some point your body's going to force you to prioritize it over other things. And that's what you don't want to do, is for it to cost you money and time. I would say like super easy, where you don't have to know a lot at all. I think your step count. I also think water intake is a massively underrated, not paid attention to thing that causes a lot of problems in people's body. And most people don't realize how crappy they feel every day until they start drinking. They'll feel so much better. So I would say step count, weights a minimum of twice a week. That's like it. Like those 3 things, if you're at least doing those, you're going to be in a good place.
All right, I'm going to ask you something totally random now, and we might even end up cutting it from the podcast, but behind you is a stormtrooper. Now, you're a big guy. You're like, what, 6'7", 6'8", and you're a really big guy, and you're very hairy with a big beard. So I'm seeing Chewbacca. So can you make a Chewbacca sound for us to capture that? All right.
Well done, sir.
Now, Chewbacca in the gym.
That's who you want training.
Do Chewbacca in the gym.
Chewbacca in the gym.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, that's our mascot right now. He's got a Village Fitness shirt on.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Zeke, for your time today. It's been very informative. Appreciate your philosophy and how much wisdom and expertise that you have in this field. Thank you for sharing that with us. And we certainly encourage all of our listeners to strongly consider the things that you've talked about, and including a very vital and active fitness regime into the daily life that just we all want to live to not only a long age, but we want to enjoy the quality of our life as we age. And this is definitely an integral part of that. So thank you so much for your time today, Zeke, and all the best.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Bye.